You have to know this if you want to get 2000 ELO in 2025. So I'm going to share with you my entire decision-making system in this game, how you have to play the opening, how you need to transition into the middle game, how to find the right middle game plan. That is the most difficult question so many players are struggling with. Well, first of all, you need a solid opening that you understand the ideas. You don't want to be stuck with opening memorization to remember all of those endless lines. Instead, you want to have a solid opening that you understand, which is the Kohler-Zukertort system. It starts with the move d4. d4 is so much simpler to play than e4 because your opponent has many less opportunities, and it's also much more similar because if you play e4, he has Sicilian defense, Caro-Kann, French defense, e5, and all of those openings are so different in terms of their nature, and you absolutely have to know how to react against everything. But here, it's so similar. Okay, my opponent plays here bishop e5. A lot of people have asked me how to deal with it if we play the Kohler-Zukertort system where we put our bishops there and there, but seems like he's stopping me. Well, I'm gonna still do the same thing and play bishop to d3. This is the simplest way to deal with this move. Just play queen to bishop to d3, and if he takes, we play queen takes d3, bring our queen. We immediately create a trap here. If he plays e6, then he's gonna immediately lose a pawn. Under 2000 on Lichess, this is actually the most popular line. I don't know why, but most of the people play e6 and immediately blunder, so be aware of that check as very nice opportunity. I never play for tricks, but if you have an opportunity to win a pawn with a check, then why not? Okay, otherwise, yes, he is smart. My opponent is slightly above 2000 ELO, so he knows his stuff. We just castle, and we continue our plan. We still bring our bishop to b2, where it's very strong, and we want to stop our opponent from playing e5. In chess, basically, in the middle game, to be successful, you need to have your strategic idea and make all of your moves to execute it. And you want to stop your opponent's idea. And to stop it, first of all, you need to understand it. And in this position, e5 would be the best move that black has if they can do it, but we play bishop b2 and stop it. Now, even if he plays bishop d6, that would still be impossible. Yet, if we do nothing, he's gonna play queen to c7 and again prepare that move. To stop that, I'm gonna play the main move in this opening, the move knight to e5. Now we are just cementing the position and he can never play e5 anymore, and if he attacks, we can always protect it with a pawn on f4. And this is very solid structure. Some people say it's similar to the stone wall. I don't find it that way, just a very nice knight, and the difference is huge in terms of this bishop. But yes, it's going to be great, and then we can even bring the second knight there, and we can start an attack on the king side. Let's see if we are going to be successful with that. Of course, the fact that we don't have this light squares bishop is reducing our attacking material a little bit. But the queen is very active, we don't have any weaknesses, any problems, so we just have a free attack, basically. You see that my opponent is a little bit scared maybe to castle there. Okay, he plays queen c7. We just play f4, following our plan. The best part is, first, we save so much time. And it's a huge problem in chess. If you have an opening problem, then you are going to lose a lot of time trying to figure it out over the board. And as a result, you're not going to have enough time for the middle game where it actually matters, and especially in the endgame. But if you play the Kohler-Zukertort system, you know your plan, and you don't need to waste any time. You just execute it. Okay, he plays knight e4 before we play knight d2, which is smart. How can we deal with that? We can maybe take and play f5. I mean, those are fancy opportunities. The normal move would be always to play knight d2, and I don't see any reason not to do that. So you always want to finish your development. Then we can bring our rook and play c4, because our rook would be against this queen, which is always nice. So we have a lot of ideas. It's not like we have to sacrifice everything to necessarily go for the checkmating attack. It's our plan, and we do it normally, and but we can also combine it with so many other ideas. Okay, he brings his second knight to e4, which is smart, and we both are gonna have our knights in the center. But now we do have this move f5, and I'm wondering whether he's okay with it. Maybe he's relying on the move knight e4 and then f6. But I can play queen e2 and queen h5 check. That would be pretty annoying for him. So what he wants to do after f5, because I'm never afraid of him taking, I'm going to take it back, and that would make my bishop strong, and still I'm fighting for this open file because he's not castling, and that might be dangerous at some point. And if he plays f5, knight e4, queen e2, castles, either way, then I'm going to just take it, and yeah, maybe it's not such a big deal, especially if he castles this way. Then maybe I don't take on e6. I instead try to continue my attack with some queen h5 move. Yes, I mean, this is the most active move. I always teach you to start with the most active moves, and that puts the most of pressure on your opponent, and that is the best strategy to win in chess. So I should stick to it. Of course, it doesn't mean that you necessarily just make the most active moves no matter what. You have to calculate the variations, because sometimes it just doesn't work. You're not ready for it, in which case you need to bring more pieces into the attack. So you need to find a balance between preparing for the battle and actually going for it. But in this case, I have developed all of my pieces except for this rook, and currently I don't have a good way to develop it, like rook e1, considering the fact that my opponent is coming with the knights, wouldn't really help me. Like, I don't just want to make a developing move for the sake of saying, well, I have developed all of my pieces, and I don't want you to do that in your games. Instead, I want you to actually develop your pieces in a way that it's useful for you. You don't want to have any unemployment going on in your camp. You want every single piece to perform a very useful function for yourself. And if you can combine that with creating problems for your opponent, that would be even better. Because, yeah, he takes some time, he's struggling to understand which side the king should castle, and whether he should play knight e4, whether he can play f6. I think he cannot play f6, but it's not that simple. Maybe he has some opportunities there. No, I also have a pawn. He can never do that. f6, queen h5, g6. I can just take it with the pawn, threatening g7 with a discover check. So he has no time to take my knight. One strategic danger that might be in this position, if he somehow takes, plays knight e4 and then takes, and then he has this good knight against my bad bishop. And in the endgame, that might be really unpleasant. But we still have the queens on the board, so if he exchanges now, for example, and goes for it, then I still am gonna attack, and actually my bishop on a3 might be very good. He goes for it. So yes, I'm 100% sure his idea is that he's gonna have a good knight against the bad bishop, but I'm gonna argue with that. Let's see. First of all, I'm not obliged now to go to e2, but I'm not sure what should be a better square. Maybe b4 is interesting, because he is not interested in opening up the position now, as I have a bishop against the knight. He wants to close it so that his knight is great and my bishop is useless. But if he plays c5, then I'm going to be able to play c4 and somehow compromise his entire pawn structure. Yet, I don't like that I do give a lot of time. Like, he's doing everything with the tempo. I do have a check, but like queen c6, and I don't think I want to exchange the queens. Because I want to attack. I want to give him a checkmate. So the question is, do I go here and here? Because if he castles this way, I still probably am gonna be able to open up the position. And if he castles this way, then my queen is going to be good somewhere here. So let me play queen e2. It feels like a very balanced move. Although maybe queen b4 was interesting, like to provoke this move c5 and then just go back. And then play c4, and yeah, that structure wouldn't be as solid anymore. That was also interesting. Okay, he castles this way. But now I'm gonna just launch an attack. Basically, with the opposite king's castle to the opposite sides, you want to launch your attack as fast as possible. and you want to make it as dangerous as possible. You want to create as many threats as humanly possible, and both sides, if they are smart, are doing that. And then whoever is creating the first dangerous threat is typically winning, because you're going to be in the driver's seat once you create that first dangerous threat and your opponent has to do something about it. Okay, I don't want just to bring one of my pawns because he's gonna play b6 and that's all she wrote. I want to bring as many pawns and pieces to the attack. So maybe I want to play bishop d4, I want to play c4, I want to open up all of those files here. And I played b4 so that after bishop d4, he cannot play c5. I'm going to just exchange it, and the more pawns I exchange here, the better. In such a situation, when you want to give a checkmate, you don't want to exchange pieces, but you want to exchange pawns. And you want to exchange pawns on the side of the board where you are stronger, when you are attacking where your opponent's king is, because that helps you. You don't want to exchange pawns here on this side of the board. Yeah, that is why my opponent is trying to do that, because your opponent is stronger here. He wants to attack you here. This is, by the way, a very good tip for you, very important tip for you. Don't play on the side of the board where you are weaker, like, I don't know, moves like that or something. Try to avoid it as much as possible. Only make moves when you need to defend against your opponent's threats. For example, here I'm thinking about just f6. Because, like, strategically speaking, if you imagine the queens are going off the board, maybe I don't want to play f6 because I put a lot of my pawns on the dark squares, which is bad for this bishop. But right now, I don't care about the checkmate, about the endgame at all. I care about checkmate. And to do that, I need to close this part of the board as much as possible, so he cannot attack me here. I don't want to open up files for him. And yeah, that would allow me to create my own threats. Okay, do I start with that or with that? Let's start with bishop d4 because it's the fastest way to create a threat. I do think that bishop a7 is possible. If he plays b6, trying to win the bishop, I'm going to have queen a6 check. Although, yeah, queen b7, I'm going to have queen takes b6. Yes, that's fine. Because if he reacts somehow to it, for example, he plays a6, I'm going to continue attacking him with b5. Although, yeah, it has some drawbacks. Maybe I don't need to start with b5. I can start with c4, then bring in my rook here, opening up that file, and then play b5. So I have to be smart about it, but at the same time, I have to be as fast as humanly possible. Because sooner or later, he is going to come here and... By the way, I'm not sure how he creates threats, because as long as I keep it closed, like he plays g3, I play h3. He plays h3, I play g3. And if it's completely closed, then it's not simple for him to somehow create problems. Okay, he sacrifices that pawn. Can I take it? Or maybe he claims that pawn is not that important. But then I play a5 and create a new threat. So again, let's check b6, the only dangerous move, but then I have queen a6 check. Yes, and I'm either winning, yeah, I'm winning that b6 pawn in every case. So I think I can take. Ah, wait, I blundered that this pawn is hanging. I mean, this is not a big deal. I can go back now with the tempo. But yeah, now this queen is going to be opened. I should have prepared it more with c4 and b5 maybe, and rook c1 and all stuff like that. But okay, this is also interesting because this pawn was important for me, not just because I'm a pawn grabber, but because I want to open up the king. Okay, let's check what kind of threats he has. Again, g3 is not dangerous for me. h4 is also pretty slow. He probably wants to play e5. But I have bishop b6, right, with a threat. Or maybe I can even completely ignore it and already go for some sacrifices. Maybe I'm not ready for that yet. But okay, I like that I have bishop b6, which is useful move in general because I control more squares as well as attack the rook, and then a6 is coming. So remember, I have told you, it's all about who is going to create the first threat. And even though I have lost that pawn, I mean, it's just bad that I have blundered the entire idea. I wasn't looking at that side. But when I think about it, I don't think it's so bad for me because he also wasted time to grab that pawn. The pawn itself doesn't really change so much in the position. In fact, if anything, maybe this bishop became a little bit stronger because this pawn is no longer there. And as I mentioned before, I removed that pawn from my opponent, which helps me a lot to make my attack possible. So overall, it's not a bad thing. And now he also removed his queen from here. Like, he might think it's good for me. I want to give a checkmate here, so I need my queen. But on the other hand, he doesn't have his queen in the defense. And right now, nobody is guarding my opponent's king. That is why he plays that, yeah, trying to maybe bring more pieces. But that means he plays on the side of the board where he is weaker, which is bad. The reason I froze there, I thought maybe I shouldn't have played bishop d4 in the first place. Why do I need this move? Maybe I should have played a5 immediately. Because then, if he takes, I can always play bishop d4 and win. Yeah, maybe it was better. And otherwise, I want to play a6. Okay, so let's calculate. If maybe he wants to play b5, trying to shut it down, like say, okay, I'm gonna leave with that pawn. It's super dangerous, but at least I have stopped it for now, and you cannot get to my king so easy. Maybe it makes sense for me to play c4 to try to open it up, especially if he wants to play e5. I'm gonna take it, I mean, after bishop b6, and then attack over here. If he takes, generally it should be good for me. On the other hand, I somehow lose the opportunity to play a6 right now. Because after c4, he can play rook a8, and then a6 wouldn't be that dangerous anymore. And if I take, he can probably take with the pawn. The question is, if I play a6, do I have enough resources afterwards? I play a7, I can play rook to a6, but how to follow up? I mean, his attack is also not really dangerous, but if I do completely nothing, then with the time he will be able to create a threat. b5, he can play c5, unfortunately, although maybe it's not a big deal. Or maybe I start with the move bishop b6. He plays that, then I play b5. Although, again, I'm not sure I achieve so much. Maybe then I do start with the move c4. Let's go for it. Because, yeah, I can probably still always create that passer. Nobody can stop me from that. And otherwise, I want to create more holes. I want to get to his king, essentially. That's my biggest goal. Okay, he plays h4. He wants to create some difficulties for me here. But I don't see any. Let me check. g3, I play h3. h3, I play g3. Maybe he wants to sacrifice, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I can play rook f4, just trying to fight against that. But again, I'm playing on the side of the board where I'm weaker. I don't want that. At least maybe I can start with takes. I really like that move. Because if he takes with this pawn, then his king is very exposed. He loses immediately. If he takes with the queen, then he opens up the d file, which generally should be good for me. And also his knight is not that solid anymore. And finally, if he takes with this pawn, at least this bishop is untouchable now, because he was always threatening this move e5. Now it's not a big deal, and maybe even rook f4 makes more sense. Also, my idea was, of course, to play b5 and a6 still. Now a6 makes even more sense, to be honest, because once he plays b5, I do have this target. Yes, let's go for it. The situation has improved dramatically for me, because before, when I had my pawn on c2, after a6 and b5, I couldn't do anything. But now I will just attack this pawn like crazy. I will play s7, rook a6. Okay, that is something I didn't anticipate it. Is it working? Yeah, probably it is, because after takes and takes, he threatens rook h1 check, like sacrificing the rook, and then queen h5 and queen h2 checkmate. So I assume I'm not allowed to take it, which means I'm losing an exchange, which might be not a big deal, because I can even not take it back, the knight on f1, but rather take on b7, if that's going to be dangerous enough. But yeah, knight g3 is interesting. Maybe from this perspective, rook f4 made sense just to stop this, create a threat, and then once he is doing something, then play a6. That would be smart. Okay, I didn't do it. Queen c2. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, I'm one tempo not fast enough to play rook f4, because if he plays queen h5, I'm still in time, queen g4, and I'm good. But he plays rook h1 immediately and gives me a checkmate. Or is it a yes, it's a checkmate. Where should the queen go? Maybe to d3, so that I still kind of control and defend everything. But if he takes, I wanted to like take here. But the problem is he might even go back. And if I take, then again I have this checkmate problem. Although maybe this, in this position, it wouldn't be a checkmate anymore. And the question is, yeah, what kind of threats I actually create there? Maybe I don't create any really dangerous threats. So let's say takes, I take here, he plays knight g3 back. Let's say I play b5. I don't believe in that somehow. Even like c5 or something. Yeah, knight g3 is a cool move from my opponent. I wish I would have seen it. Okay, but it's just an exchange. If you really think about it, so maybe I just take it with the queen. And now I still continue my attack. I still like the fact that my rook is very active. Maybe it was interesting to take that with the rook and then play rook f5, but somehow I feel the rook is more active here. And now my bishop is very strong. I got rid of this annoying knight. So hopefully my attack is still not dead. Okay, why can't I just play h3? What am I missing here? Like I said, it's always great for me to shut it down completely, to close everything. As long as he doesn't come here to f2 to exchange the queens, it should be okay. And now, even if I leave with my queen and he gets to the f2 square, I can just step back to h1. That is just a check, and it's not a big deal for me. Otherwise, the attack is over, and yes, and then I'm gonna get chances for my attack. I'm gonna play a7 immediately, because I don't see a single active move for him. I like control this square, and he cannot even go anywhere with his queen, because queen f5 would be very annoying. Yes, and otherwise he has to play something passive. Probably he's just relying on his material advantage, but not that big. Let me play rook a6 for now, just improving my rook's position, and keeping an eye, putting some pressure on this pawn on c6. You always want to put as much pressure as possible on your opponent. Okay, he attacks there. By the way, I might even just play king h1, because once he takes everything, although no, that's not necessarily so good for me. Let me play queen d3, or maybe queen c1. Yes, queen c1 is the most active move, because I threaten queen takes c6 immediately. You cannot ignore it, right? Unfortunately, rook b6 doesn't seem to work. He can take there. And he wants to do that. How do I create a new threat? Maybe I do that. Yeah, but then at some point checkmate is coming. Maybe I didn't need to play that after all. Okay, I have 5 seconds. I have to speed up. So after queen f5, I want to play rook a1 back. Yeah, that move wasn't great. But at least after queen f2, as I said, I can play king h1. I don't see any more threats. The e3 pawn is protected. And then I want to play queen b6 and queen b7. That feels like a very dangerous threat. I'm not sure if he has any ways to stop it. Unfortunately, I just lost some time on that rook a6, rook a1 maneuver, but I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. And my key strategy here, my key thought for you is not to try to make all of the perfect moves. It's never possible. Rather, to have your strategic idea, first of all, to have this solid opening. Okay, he takes. Yeah, he's threatening a checkmate. I have to take it. And now the problem is, again, the checkmate and... wait, the pawn is protected, so I can just play rook d1. But now the material is equal, and arguably his king is less secure, and I still have this very dangerous pawn. Okay, yeah, that is actually smart. Let me play queen d4 so that I still protect everything. And at some point, I'm gonna start hunting those pawns. Both have no time. Yeah, let me play rook a1 for now, because I can secure that pawn. I can save it for now, why not? And then see what kind of options I have. Yeah, for example, that was a bad move because that just blundered the rook, but that's exactly the point. So you put as much pressure as possible. First you have a solid opponent, then you have a strategic idea in the middle game, and you put as much pressure on your opponent until he collapses. But the only part missing here is an opening for black. In this video, I show you the simple opening that you can use to crush anyone under 2000 ELO.